Welcome to the I-80 Club Saturday morning coffee show. It's just Jack here, but maybe that's appropriate on the game that I have savored, that I have looked forward to, that I have amplified for years in probably ways most other people haven't. But I think people have come around to that. Come around to my way of thinking. I'm going to have more to say on that later in the show. So let me tell you right now, those who are just joining now, this is going to be a little bit of a different show, not only because I am hosting it by myself. We are usually, obviously, a dual show. Josh Peterson is normally here, but he has 1620 The Zone duties this morning doing the pregame show. And so I'm going to do it, take us all the way solo today. And luckily, I do a lot of solo radio work, so not really scared about that, but I'm glad all of you are here. I'm very excited. We got Nebraska and Iowa today. We are going to, at the first part of it, we're going to kind of talk about the game. I'm going to get some feedback from those of you who are club members on the Discord. You can always also give us a super chat if you are not a member and you're watching on YouTube. One thing you can do, even if you don't want to go into the Patreon and be a member, you don't care about the Discord or the premium shows, you can, if you would, just subscribe on YouTube. That would help us out. And as you know, sometimes our show times change a little bit, and that will help you get notifications of when they happen. Not only this show, but we have got, I believe I just got a text that said our friends at Volleyball State are going to be doing a live public show after Penn State tonight. I think they are trying to break the records set by the Nebraska Ball Hour. Very hot show also. Right now, I think we're going to be doing another one of those perhaps tomorrow, but I'm going to continue to work with Caleb on that. But like I said, there's some flexibilities with the times of the show because all of us have other jobs that we are doing. And thank you for being patient with me for starting this one 10 plus minutes late today, which I did. I believe you will say after it's over, and in fact, I'm sure you will say after it's over that it was worth it. So public for everyone. Like I said, today we do a lot of public for everyone stuff, but we also do some member-only podcasts and shows, whether it's Josh and myself here on Wednesdays with I-80 Live, or Volleyball State does some post-game shows that are premium only. And so that might be one good reason. Or if you just want to support what we are doing and allow us to keep doing it, we love doing it. And the support from all of you from memberships or liking, subscribing on YouTube, that allows us to keep doing this and give you a little bit of a different look at Nebraska sports. So the way the show is going to go today, we're going to talk about this game here. Like I said, and I'll get some feedback from you. I'll give you my thoughts on this game as well, plus the news of the week, which obviously has been pretty significant as well. We are going to have our Bod.Coach Coach of the game today. Josh will be mad at me because I mean, everybody knows this right now. We have very different personalities. I am not as detail-oriented as he is, so I hope I do everything right. I don't believe we're going to do a Saturday flight because it's not Saturday. Plus, that's not sponsored anyway, so I'm not going to mess with that. Sorry, Josh, if I was supposed to. But I will do the Bod.Coach Coach of the game. You can think about who that might be. And then after we do that, I am going to finish with, I guess I would call it I don't know if a soliloquy, an essay. An essay. Yeah, we'll call it that. An essay on the Nebraska-Iowa rivalry by me, Jack Mitchell, with some thoughts that I've got and something that I hope is going to get you in the right state of mind for Nebraska and Iowa today. So that is what we've got going. Adam on the chat, first thing I look at to my right, and when I'm looking at my right, I'm looking at my Discord comments. I see Adam say, my thoughts, F Iowa. Okay, there we go. Oh, my goodness. And MexiFry just sends in the availability report for Nebraska. And let's see if there's anything on here that is surprising. Out for the game, Hartzog, Demetrius Bell, Dylan Raiola, do all those. Connor Booth, Jamarian Parker, Marks, Tyson Terry, Gatula, Jeremiah Jones. No surprises there. Out for season, no surprises there. Unless there's something, yes. And then questionable, Mario Buford, Jackson Carpenter. No, there's nothing there. Okay, there's nothing interesting there. Sorry. Out for Iowa, Jarriett Bowie, Xavier Williams. Questionable TJ Hall. Hayden Large. I want Hayden Large to play. You know why I want Hayden Large to play? That is the guy for Iowa who transferred from Dordt College in Northwest Iowa. Now, for those of you who don't know, I, as a Northwestern College of Northwest Iowa graduate, our blood rivals are Dordt and vice versa. And so, amazingly, Iowa has a player from Dordt, and Nebraska has a player, Jalen Gramstead, from Northwestern. And while, of course, and I say this in all honesty, I hope to goodness there's no injury or anything to TJ Lateef. Man, it would be cool if somehow Jalen Gramstead factored into this game today against Iowa on his last game of the year, where he essentially didn't really play during his career, but he'll probably be on the sideline next year as a coach, is what it looks like. So in any case, I'm hoping Hayden Large plays, because I want that additional Northwestern win over Dordt in addition to the Nebraska over Iowa. So there you go. A couple of things. Let's real quick, before we get any further into the detail of the game today, let's talk about the news of the week, the elephant in the room, so to speak. And I'm curious what you guys have to say on here about this. But the CBS Sports report that, I mean, if you read the report, it really used a lot of qualifying words because it was being very careful about a report based on sources and having the exact words be parsed, which can happen sometimes. That basically said Nebraska is, what was the word that they used? Maybe you guys can remember it better than I can. Nebraska is preparing. Nebraska is bracing. Nebraska is bracing for the possibility that Dylan Raiola could maybe leave. I added a few qualifiers in there, but it was funny when you read it, because the report was so careful about not actually saying anything that it threw every possible qualifier in there. Now, I don't say that to say that it's wrong. I don't believe it's wrong. In fact, I have gotten to the point where just a confluence of events, reading between the lines, hearing some level of information, none of it that is a direct confirmation, but hearing some level of information makes me think that, yeah, I think he probably is going to be on his way. If I had to guess why that is happening, my guess, given that everyone that I've talked to in the recruiting world who followed all of the recruitment of Dylan Raiola commented, I don't think this will surprise anyone, but commented on the above normal involvement of his family. And I think his dad, former Husker, Dominic Raiola, kind of in the decision-making in the process. And of course, parents, families are always involved in those sorts of things for the most part. But if you talk to anyone who covered his recruitment, and I didn't myself, I don't cover recruiting, I couldn't do that. But those who do, like, made it an explicit sort of point to mention that every single time. And so with that knowledge, I guess the way, if I had to put together the most likely scenario of what I think happened, I don't think it has anything to do. And no, I don't think it's some kind of a leak or negotiate. Like, if you want to know what I think he's leaving. I do. I don't have confirmation. I can't say I'm 100% sure of that. But if you want to know what I think, yes, I think Dylan is going to enter the transfer portal. He probably already has a place to go, I'm going to guess. If I threw out a few guesses, I think possibilities are, or just things I've heard or possibilities: Miami, Arizona State. I heard some Oregon, which I don't know that it makes sense, but I guess, I don't know. I don't really believe that. I know Texas A&M was one that was discussed last year. I don't know. Maybe could there be? I heard someone say Indiana. Wow. So in any case, those are some of the names that have been thrown out there. I don't know if I believe any of those, but I do. If I had to bet right now, my bet would be that he's gone. So, but what I think probably happened is that as this season went on, and I think probably particularly the Minnesota game happened, and Dylan was on the ground 9 times, and as we discussed throughout, the days after that game and other games where the pressure was an issue, I think there was some shared fault among a lot of people in the pressure issues. While the offensive line usually takes the brunt, and they deserved a lot of the brunt of the critique on that, there probably was some that went to the play calling. There probably was some that went to the to Dylan Raiola as well, and all of those things. But my guess is that eventually the family said, hey, Dylan and Dad said, the ultimate goal here is not necessarily just to do the best thing for Nebraska. The ultimate goal here is to make Dylan Raiola an NFL quarterback, right? I think we would all, and I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't blame him or his dad or anyone for that. Like, that's, of course, when you play football, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to get into the NFL, make some money in the NFL, have a successful NFL career. His dad had a successful NFL career. And so I don't blame him for that goal. And I also, in some ways, don't blame him for saying, hey, I've seen enough this year. It's not happening here. Or we won't have him to the place. This program, for whatever reason it is exactly, won't have him to the place that is going to make him starting to be talked about at the top of draft boards starting in, a year from now, essentially. And I just don't think they think it's going to happen here, would be my guess, and looking at the whole thing. And can any of us really disagree at this point? Like, and is that, now the question is, how much of that is on him and how much of that is on the situation here? And if it is on the situation here, what part of the situation is it on here? Is there a reason why next year couldn't turn around with that? But again, when your final goal and the ultimate goal and the ultimate important thing to happen out of this whole thing is to get him to that point, man, you can completely see why it would happen, why this would happen again. So, Dilo says the family surprised with a program with almost no track record of producing NFL quarterbacks doesn't get ready for the NFL. I don't know if they're surprised. I mean, I guess they thought it might happen, but I think they thought Matt Rule had a great chance of doing it. And I think it looked like the best situation for him at the time. I don't know if they trusted his ability to get a chance at Georgia, to be honest, or the other places that were recruiting him early enough to make that happen. They wanted him to play right away. I think they wanted a commitment for him to play right away. So I think that was a big part of that too. I don't know that they said Nebraska is 1,000% the best place, or even necessarily their history as a program dictates that it's a great place to get a quarterback in the NFL. I just think they thought the situation with Rule at the time, and with Dominic's connections to the I'm sure that played into it as well, and familiarity with it as well. I'm sure that all played in, and Nebraska's probably full, unwavering commitment and buy-in to that, which they needed to do to get what looked like a generational recruit at the time. And so, I don't even know. I don't know that there's a ton of blame to go around here. I understand why they took the shot at that when they did. I understand why Nebraska wanted to do it at the time that they did. I understand why either Dylan or the family, if it's true that they're looking elsewhere or going to go elsewhere, why they're thinking about that, because he's not on a track unless things change completely next year. He's not on a track to be looking like someone who is a high draft pick, a Heisman candidate, all of those things. It's just, and especially if they think Emma Johnson's leaving, which we can get to in a point. The offensive line doesn't have significant reinforcements coming in. You're losing maybe your best or second best offensive lineman this year when Rocco Spindler leaves. Latovsky's gone too, and they don't know what's behind him. And I don't know, maybe there's some frustration with Dana Holgerson with the whole thing in the play calling. I certainly had frustration with play calling against Minnesota, without a doubt. And so perhaps that goes into the situation as well. So I just think that is what it is right now. And, it's weird. Obviously, again, not confirmed, not happening for sure. This is my guess on what happens, but you've got a lot of people, I think, who are starting to come around to think that way. And it is kind of interesting. Like, at what point did Nebraska I don't see a lot of mourning and gnashing of teeth with this whole thing. There's probably some, and maybe we will see more, I think, but there hasn't been a lot. And man, can you imagine if we told you coming into this year that there was a possibility he would leave and that fans would kind of be some upset about it, some mad because of loyalty, some okay with it, some think it's a good thing, right? It's that in itself is kind of surprising, but it really just goes to the idea that, man, if it was going to click with him here, it would have clicked by now. And it never did. In fact, in some ways, the offense this year, with more talented skill positions, and I would say an equivalent, maybe better offensive line, but at least equivalent offensive line to the year before, but better skill positions, somehow was less, I don't know, less explosive, less interesting, less fun than it was a year ago when everyone wanted the offensive coordinator run out of town, and he eventually did get run out of town. That's crazy. Like, that is crazy. Because the best weapon of this offense is still Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson is this offense that's exciting. And so I don't know. To me, I would guess this all predated Dylan's injury. I don't think TJ Lateef having a good game against UCLA was what made this happen. I would guess the biggest catalyst for this was probably the Minnesota game. I don't think, again, guessing, speculating, I think maybe there'll be a popular sentiment and thought that, okay, this happened after he got injured and saw that, Nebraska loves TJ Lateef. The fans love, everybody's going to want to be quick. That's not it. It wasn't about that, I don't think. We'll see. We'll see who talks in the end, and maybe nobody will. How the Rule going down there to Georgia, though, to see Dayton play, I don't know about that, because I guess I had assumed if there was a decision that Dylan was going to either leave or test the waters, I always just assumed that the same thing would be true. If they don't think it's the right place for Dylan, they're not going to think it's the right place for Dayton. And I don't know if Rule was going down there making a last-ditch effort to keep Dayton, and it's like, why, if so, right? If Dylan's leaving, like, honestly, why would you be doing that right now? Do you think you need him in your quarterback room next year if Dylan leaves? You need him more maybe if Dylan leaves? Is that what it is? Or is it, I don't know. Because other than next year, right, if you've got Lateef who's staying, and you've got Trey coming in the year after, who's another 4-star, and who I think obviously the staff has a lot of confidence in him kind of taking over in a lot of ways. Well, are you fighting for Dayton? It doesn't seem to make sense to me, other than that you're just looking for quarterback depth next year. But I would feel like you want to wash your hands of this whole situation on all of this. And so I don't know. That will be fascinating. I don't know if we'll ever hear why Rule was there and if he was making a last minute pitch to try and turn this thing around or not. But Dayton did decommit after that. And so maybe he was still on the fence, and Rule went to have some, realistic conversations about what next year would be like if Dayton was here, with or without Dylan, perhaps. And maybe Matt Rule went down to tell him TJ Lateef's going to start next year. We'll tell you that right now. I don't know. Or maybe it was just to try and mend relationships. I don't know, but whatever it was, we know where we ended up from that whole thing. So I think that whole thing is fascinating. So those are my thoughts on that. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts or questions. There's a lot. Jordan says the program is bigger than one player and one family. Yeah, I think there is going to be like a breath of just relief, just sort of, I mean, it was a lot, right? That whole thing. And for Matt Rule, it really had to be a lot, I assume, because it felt like it was very important to make sure, the family, from what I hear, like the family was happy. Everything was good. It was just the whole Dylan experience. And while my critiques of him were, I had some on the field. Sometimes I felt like a little bit of it was a bit hokey, but some of the stuff. But on the other hand, I think like largely I appreciated that he was likable, that he didn't seem fake, that he was sort of, I don't even know how to I think I called it, and I mean this as a compliment, but almost like uh, dorkily trying to be a part of everything, which I liked. I found that really endearing, I think, about him in a lot of cases. And so I have no real ill will for him about his time here in that way, or that he was a jerk. I mean, he could have been. We've seen a whole bunch of other players and coaches, frankly, who haven't embraced this place like he did. So I'll always appreciate that about him. But in any case, I think that's where we are. And that leaves us now with TJ Lateef. The only other question I have on that before we move to this game today, only other question I have on that is, so assuming that is the case, just for a moment, let's assume, and again, not for sure, but let's assume that is the case. That means next year you go in with Lateef and Davila. Davila, who hasn't played at all. He was the transfer from Purdue. He was a decently sought after recruit. It was an interesting transfer for him. I guess, Purdue was switching coaches, and so that I'm sure played into the decision that Davila, but we have no idea. In terms of fans, what he's capable of. Would we feel okay with him being the number 2 next year? And even if he was, you're going to need a number 3. So that would be my biggest remaining question. Now, if those things come to pass, and I'm glad Josh isn't here because he'll get mad at me. He'll say, well, it'll just all work out, Jack. It'll just be fine. Some quarterback will come. Some quarterback will be here. Like, to me, given the likelihood that a number 2 quarterback will play, I'm curious how the other quarterback is going to get there, who it's going to be. Are you going to go into the transfer portal and try and get a backup? I suppose that's the most likely. So there you go. Let's see what else. Yeah, there's another shot. My second shot at the availability report today. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that, guys, on the Discord here before we move on? DW says, I have no ill will, wish him well, just wasn't the perfect fit. Both DR and Nebraska will likely be better off next year, and that's just fine. Yeah, there's almost a feeling like that's maybe the most likely thing, is everybody is better off because of this. Yeah, Dilo says they could get a portal guy. Yeah, I think so. Jim says, if he lives, I'll miss DR. I've appreciated him, but appeasing the family may have set Rule back. Armax says Rule needs to ditch the podcast, chasing 3, social media crap, take a class on game management, and say a lot less. Whoa. And then Dilo says, I personally don't think his skill, Dylan, his skill set allows for Nebraska to get where they need to go. Not sure TJ is the guy, but I prefer his style more. Yeah, that's a bigger question I'd like to have. Like, what? Okay, so if Dylan didn't work, and especially if Dylan works out somewhere else, like, what does work here exactly? What does work here in this offense under Matt Rule, right? In this conference, what does exactly work? Who is your prototypical? I mean, that'd be an interesting question, I think. And again, maybe that's another podcast, but who is your prototypical quarterback, that the comp that you would want in here, if it's not Dylan Raiola / Patrick Mahomes, I guess, which is his usual comp. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I have no idea. Mike on the super chat, thank you, says if Mo quarterback is a starter, need a solid backup. I agree wholeheartedly, Mike. I have been preaching quarterback depth and the importance of it for a long time. There are some who just like to take it for granted and assume it will be okay. I hope it is. Dilo says mobility at quarterback. I'd agree. I would agree. That is probably going to be key. So we got that. Real quick, the game itself today. My question for the chat here, real quick, and I don't know if I totally have an answer to this for myself. I've been thinking about it, but which side of the ball, offense or defense, needs to up their game more than where they've been to win this game, right? I guess a more negative way to ask it is, which side are you more concerned about? But either way, right? which side of the ball needs to ball out, essentially, in a way that they haven't so much. And I got defense, 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 defense so far. Okay. Maybe that's it then. Maybe that's it. It's and the argument against that is, I mean, Iowa's defense statistically is very impressive. Iowa's offense, well, they've had some moments. They are not statistically impressive. And that surprises no one, right? That's what Iowa always has been. But you look at the Iowa stats in terms of defense, it's typical Iowa, right? Rushing defense 14, pass defense 12. These are rates in the nation. Pass efficiency defense 9, total defense 8, scoring defense 8. Now weirdly, Nebraska has the better passing defense, but in terms of rushing defense, Iowa 14, Nebraska 93. Okay. Total defense, Iowa 8, Nebraska 20. On the offense, though, Iowa, and again, it's just what you expect. An okay rushing offense, ranked 50th in the nation. It's fine. They've got no running back who's dominant. I think their running backs have a total of 2 or 3 touchdowns total this year. Their rushing touchdowns and their second leading rusher is Gronowski from the quarterback position. But their running backs don't get touchdowns. They don't get long runs. They have decent averages. It's funny. They look like their overall stats combined, if you put them all together as one, it looks like Emmett Johnson as a junior or as a sophomore is what it looks like for them. But Iowa's pass numbers, I mean, passing offense, 129, 134 yards a game. Pass efficiency, 114. Total offense, 120. And so, if we were going to put even a finer tip on it, I think we would all agree it's not just Nebraska's defense. It is Nebraska's rushing defense. And even a finer tip than that, it is Nebraska's ability to not get gashed by Gronowski running the ball, right? Like that's probably, if I had to put one key stat, tell me one stat about the game, and I'll tell you who wins or loses, it might be Gronowski's rushing line. That would probably be it for me. Yeah, here's one theory I do have on this game, though. By the way, Iowa net punting this year. The Iowa 94. Iowa coming in worse in net punting than Nebraska. That said, Iowa punt returns, number 1 in the nation. Iowa kick returns, number 12 in the nation. Here's another weird thing about this year, turnover margin. You know who's got the better turnover margin of this team, of these two teams? Nebraska. So there are some things about this year's matchup that are, while there's some things that are always Iowa, right? Good statistical defense, not much of a passing game, a good enough running game, very good on special teams, right? Those things are all there. But some things about Nebraska are different this year that Iowa has counted on in these games in the past. And last year, that game, Kirk Ferentz, it was like he wrote down what was going to happen in that game, and then he just waited for it to happen, which was, look, if we get out of the way and let Nebraska make their mistakes, like has happened in every other game against them where we've won in the last 7 years, it'll happen. And sure enough, I mean, it was almost like, it kind of reminds me of the video of Tom Osborne at halftime in the Orange Bowl talking to the team and gets, hey, Miami, keep your hands up because Miami's going to throw a punch at some time and they're going to get a penalty. And there it is in the second half. I imagine Kirk Ferentz in the second half, hey, play smart, don't make mistakes, right? Don't try and make the biggest play in the world because eventually Nebraska will make the mistake. And sure enough, they did, and that changed the whole game. So here's why, if you want to try and have some optimism about this thing, why I think you can make it. I don't think Iowa can count on that in ways that they've been to in the past, or at least statistics in this year would indicate it. While Nebraska certainly could look back at the season and say, hey, Nebraska, it's just a lateral step. It's about the same as last year. One thing I think we can all agree on is Nebraska has been better at minimizing turnovers. Nebraska's been better, way better at catastrophic special teams mistakes. They haven't been making those. And those are the things, I mean, go back through the years. 2024, catastrophic special teams mistake. 2023, catastrophic turnover, right? 2021, catastrophic special teams mistake. 2019, was that a catastrophic turnover? Nebraska actually kind of came back in that one. That was catastrophic clock management at the end. Was probably what that one was. Okay, and you can go back, and it's littered with catastrophic turnovers, catastrophic special teams mistakes in Iowa, waiting for those to happen and them inevitably happening. What if Nebraska doesn't have that? What if Nebraska doesn't have that, and you just have the game as it normally turns out, where Nebraska maybe outgains Iowa, which seems to happen fairly frequently. Nebraska out big plays Iowa, right? Even though neither team's scoring a lot of points, but you take away Nebraska being the one who makes the huge mistake in the game. And Ferentz can't play for that, maybe. We'll see. DW says, I think it'll be hard for TJ to avoid at least one significant turnover. If he does play clean, Nebraska's a good chance. That's a great point. That is a great point to this game. Lateef can't have a big turnover. Yeah, you can't. That is what they are waiting for, the turnovers, the special teams, mistakes. And then And I include, by the way, in special teams mistakes, I don't just mean muffing punts or getting punts blocked. I mean kicking it to Weechen, the best punt returner, and probably going to be a back-to-back Johnny the Jet Award winner, I should say. Don't let him touch the ball. So if he takes one back, I would count that as a special teams terrible situation. So Dila says none of this matters if they can't stop the run. Yeah, I guess not, but historically, that's not really been the way. Yeah, that's a completely different. In other words, you say it wouldn't matter if they did stop the run if they didn't stop the catastrophic special teams mistakes and turnover. So yeah, obviously, none of that matters if Gronowski throws for 8 touchdowns either, right? Like none of that matters. But if you want to go by the way the games have gone in past years, which is not Nebraska not being able to stop the run, by the way, that's not been an issue. And I understand it might be this year, but my point is, historically, it's very different. The strategy for Iowa has played into those things, and those things are not there nearly as much. It's not about stopping the run. Am I concerned about Nebraska stopping the run? Of course. That was a separate point. We already had that discussion, though. All right. Any other things on this? Jim says, once again, we are comparing Iowa, whose best 20 years is equated to a few division titles and one undefeated regular season, to a national title winning team. Is Iowa good? Yes. Are they world beaters? No. Let's just go play good O&D and make a special teams play. Let's do this. Yeah. I mean, listen, I think Iowa kind of plays to their this year's Iowa absolutely plays to the quality of their opponents. There's no doubt about that. Impressively close against Indiana. Absolutely. Impressively close against USC. Absolutely. Weirdly badly close against Michigan State. Yeah. Should they have beat Iowa State? Yeah. So, I mean, weirdly at Rutgers had them in a position late in that game. Iowa ended up winning by 10, but Rutgers had them in a bad position. Like, they're all over the board. Yes, they've been really good, but they've also been very mediocre as well in the same year. So I don't know which one you're going to get from them. It's going to depend on how fired up Nebraska comes out in this whole thing. And to me, in addition to Nebraska stopping the run, the other concern I have after that Penn State game, and you guys are tired of me talking about this, and you're going to hear more about it here in just a second, is whether or not Nebraska cares about this game. Whether or not Nebraska cares about this game as much as Iowa does. And last year, I'm going to get to this. I think we might have got a step in the right direction on that, and I hope it's still there. But God, if I hear after the game that Iowa, or feel after the game that Iowa was more fired up to beat Nebraska than Nebraska was Iowa, it's going to be so freaking frustrating. So freaking frustrating. So DW says Nebraska would likely be the best team Iowa's beaten on the road all year. Yeah. And again, tight with USC against USC. Tight with Oregon. I was in Iowa. I know. I forgot that one. I didn't even mention Oregon. Like, they kept it close with a bunch of really good teams. But again, they were like weirdly close too with some other teams that didn't make any sense. So there you go. All right, let's make sure and get our coach of the game. And I got to remember how Josh wanted me to do this. And of course, I have no idea how he told me to do it. So I got to figure this out in a moment. So bear with me. Talk amongst yourself. Do not leave after the Bod.Coach Coach of the game, because the one big thing I want to do after that is share with you my essay that I've got about this rivalry to send you off on that. There it is. All right, we got it. All right, Bod.Coach Coach of the week. I said of the game, it's of the week. I've decided to make the Bod.Coach Coach of the week because of what D'Lo, myself, so many others were saying about Nebraska's ability to stop the run. John Butler, the defensive coordinator. The one way that this thing, I think, gets to be a really bad situation for Nebraska this year is if if Iowa's getting the chunk gains some other teams and particularly quarterbacks have gotten on Nebraska. That is, again, show me Gronowski's rush totals after the game. They have not figured out how to stop quarterbacks who can run, and even quarterbacks who can't run, because Jaden Maiava is not confusing anyone as Lamar Jackson, yet he still killed Nebraska. We talk all about the big runs King had. Maiava's runs were the things that killed Nebraska against UCLA, right? Same things with Nico. And that has been something that really has been an Achilles heel of this defense. Run defense overall, but I think particularly when Iowa focuses more on those teams even did with a running quarterback, you really wonder how prepared Nebraska can be or will be. And you really wonder if this defensive line can be ready, right? To actually get some. Nebraska is dying for some more tackles for loss, for more sacks. How about a fumble? You remember fumbles? Last fumble recovery Nebraska got was against Michigan. Remember that? Judy punched it out. That's the last fumble recovery. Nebraska's got 4 interceptions this year. We can probably name them all really quickly here. And 2 of them were by Singleton on Wounded Ducks against Michigan State. The other one was the Hartzog one, right? And then there was probably one in either the Akron or the Houston Christian game. You have got to not only be able to not let the running game, especially quarterback game, gash Nebraska, but you have also got to find a way to have positive, disruptive defensive plays that have not. We talk about Nebraska's turnover margin being better than Iowa's this year, and yeah, it's not because the defense has been creating turnover. It's because the offense hasn't been turning over, and it's about a whole bunch of defensive linemen that I think every single one of them. You hate to do this, but man, every single one of the defensive linemen, I think we all assumed more for coming into this year, right? With the exception of Petchak. I think he is. I didn't know that I had any thoughts on him this year, but Petchak, other than him, Keona Davis, need more from him. RVP, need more from him. Cam Leonard, need more from him. Who am I forgetting? There are other. Judy, need more from him. All of these guys, you got to get more from them. And so that whole thing, but it's not just about the defensive line. It's about the whole scheme and the problems and fixing the problems that have come in stopping the running game and the quarterback running game in particular. And so that's why we are making John Butler the Bod.Coach Coach of the week, which is not necessarily a portender of success, although it kind of has been so far this year. And so let's hope that continues to be the case. But John Butler, hopefully be a good coach like the Bod.Coach is. And by the way, check out Bod.Coach. And for those of you listening, it's Bod.Coach/I80 Club. And you get 10% off your own personal trainer. Yeah, it is an AI-based personal trainer. It's someone essentially, and I say someone, but it is someone you text with throughout the course of the week. You design workouts. You ask questions about what you should be doing, what you could be doing. You tell it what equipment you have, what you don't have. If you have no equipment at all in your home, you tell it what your goals are, what your limitations are. So many times, maybe you guys have had this situation. You want to start working out, and it's not necessarily that the spirit isn't willing to do it, but it's just like, how do I start? What do I do? I don't want to look like an idiot at the gym. Bod.Coach is going to help you out and make sure, get you on a routine, get you doing the right things, get you doing what you can do, even if you don't go to a gym. And again, all you got is your basement and body weight. Go outside, whatever it is, no matter what it is, it'll design workouts for you. It'll help you get through them. It'll answer your questions. It's been very impressive. I have really enjoyed using it, and hopefully you'll be seeing the results very soon. All right, there we go. Okay, we started late. I'm going to try and not get us out of here too late, but I do have an essay I prepared to end the show today. This will be it. And you guys all know for this game, it's always been something that is very, very important to me. And I've considered a big rivalry, or a big rivalry for me, I think, before a lot of people did. And I think people are starting to come around on that. And we'll get into that here in a moment. But I've always thought, it's kind of weird because when I was growing up, the rivalries were Oklahoma, Colorado, and then to some degree, Kansas State, Missouri on the periphery. But not one of those was kind of integrated with people I knew or talked to regularly or daily, like the Iowa situation is. And maybe that was true of people in Western Nebraska and Colorado, but I didn't know Oklahoma fans. I didn't really know Colorado fans. The internet wasn't around for most of the Big 12, right? And so you weren't even talking online to them. And so there wasn't just this sort of fan on fan sort of disdain. And that started for me with Iowa. And I want to tell the backstory and try and get all of you pumped up. So let's finish the show up. And as we leave you here today, try to imagine what it must be like in my heart, just over an hour from kickoff, where there are no professional football teams, no other major university, and in Lincoln now. What a wonderful opportunity to start off this Christmas season with a wonderful and crowning moment in the career of not only this caffeine-soaked heart, but for an entire generation of fans, essentially bereft of wonderful and crowning moments, especially against this team. And when they did exist, they've got asterisks on them. I spent years of my life in Iowa. Most of you know that. I'm heavily invested in the state. Spent 4 years going to college in the northwest corner of Iowa, and while I was there, I met a beautiful girl from central Iowa who I was pretty sure at the time wasn't into me like that way. But being the eternal optimist, always thinking the next big win was just around the corner, I still asked her on a date. And let's be honest, the odds were stacked against me. My history of pulling off big unexpected wins were essentially nil over a period of several years as a young single man, and the people around me were beginning to question whether I was on a path headed in the right direction or if it was time for some major changes. There were some whispers about me in 1998 that the Luke Perry sideburns had become an outdated offensive strategy. Defenses adapted to it. And while corduroy pants and like long sleeve t-shirts under short sleeve t-shirts were being widely used around the nation with some success, my over reliance on that window dressing without getting better up front was just not suited for Big Ten courting. So with all this in mind, I knew it was essential to get off to a good start on that first date, play from ahead. And unfortunately, the execution was lacking, in part because instead of living and dying date prep, I spent too much time on my other hobbies, like downloading Winamp skins, obsessing about beating the guys across the hall in GoldenEye, with a very heavy reliance on proximity mines, by the way, trying to get into ska music. Mistakes piled up early, evident from the get-go, as I weirdly walked around the side of my 1989 Nissan Sentra to open her door for her at the Applebee's in Sioux City, Iowa, North America's least romantic city. Seriously, Sioux City makes Beatrice look like Venice. But right away, I knew I should have deferred the decision on our location to make sure I had the wind in my favor as we got out and an immediate gust blew in directly from the stockyards. So anyway, I won't bore you all with my missteps from that point. There were many, but let's just put a pin in that one for now and chat as we did while we were waiting for our chicken wonton tacos and strawberry lemonades. So suffice it to say, having already lived in Iowa at that time, this was like a significant moment in my investment, my future understanding of the state. Already at that point, I'd actually been taken aback multiple times by the disdain that was openly expressed to me by Iowa fans about Iowa football when I told them I was a Husker. I guess I don't know what I really expected, but given that the only thing I knew about Iowa football was that they wore those stickers on their helmets thanking farmers. And that was kind of cool. And that their tight ends stood up like at the line of scrimmage with their hands on their hips, and that was kind of weird. But beyond that, I had no real like animosity. Same way, I guess I didn't really have any animosity for Wisconsin or Indiana football or Wake Forest football. I barely knew them, and they weren't really ever on TV, or at least on my TV much growing up. So, like, the reality though is that the disdain for me, for Nebraska, for my fandom became more evident, more intense with every passing year. In fall 1999, during dorm move-in, dudes on my floor were telling me that Liddell Betts and Matt Bowen, that they had something in store for Nebraska. And that was right before they started waxing poetically about how Tim Dwight had done amazing things in the Drake relays. Again, I didn't have much to say. Iowa was pretty much on the back burner. Like, basically, I was hurrying to get I just got a $2,000 computer with a 4 gig hard drive. Yeah. So I was wanting to hook that up so I could, number one, play GTA 1 in my dorm room. My first ever chance to have high-speed internet. Also, I want to get to the Huskerpedia message boards and find out if Fred Petito had convinced Eric Crouch to stay. In any case, the ribbing continued, and I, as the Bible tells you to do, over and over again, turned to the other cheek, right? Nebraska obliterates Iowa in 99. Eric Crouch, muscle-bound Eric Crouch runs over an Iowa dude. 2000, absolutely destroys them. Big day for Matt Davison. And my Hawkeye friends, as their new coach, Kirk Ferentz, was leading them to a 1-10 record that year, came to my dorm room to laugh in my face as Dan Alexander fumbled at the freaking goal line at Darrell K. Royal Stadium. Why did they care? Like what the crap is the problem with these people? I still had bigger football concerns, but this was getting really, really annoying. So in 2001, I made my first trip to Iowa as an in-law on Thanksgiving and watched my first Husker football game with the extended family of in-laws. Yeah, you know where this is going if you're a Husker fan. I hunkered down in the den, wore my red, had my hat on, all huskered out. And after about a half hour, it's pretty clear that everyone but me was going to have the best Thanksgiving weekend ever. And they would just kind of walk in and be like, hey, what's the score? And they totally knew it. Then they would send someone else in to do the same thing 5 minutes later to the new guy. Anyway, we couldn't even finish watching the game. And so I listened to the end of it miserably on a Walkman at a big, large, extended family gathering for Thanksgiving with no TV. And my lovely grandmother-in-law, who I have never had and never did hear her say anything but a kind word in her life. Upon hearing I was an apoplectic Nebraska fan, you know what she said to me at that moment? Don't worry, tomorrow's the real game, the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. I was in hell. Side note, the Iowa State game that year had been postponed because of September 11. Also, Iowa lost, by the way, in that game. But I didn't care at all. Like, it's still not on my radar. So after years and years of this, and Iowa football having some increasing success, in Nebraska having Bill Callahan, right? Iowa ended up in my beloved Orange Bowl on multiple occasions. I got to watch great Husker games like 2004 Texas Tech and 2006 Colorado at the in-laws' house in Iowa. And like the scar tissue started to build up from those experiences. And I was finally starting to develop this opinion on Iowa that you now know very well. It took 16 years of that to get there. I finally started paying attention to their games. Oklahoma was an afterthought. Missouri was the primary target, but Iowa's personal rival stock for me was growing. And then Tom Osborne and Harvey Perlman get to work, and Nebraska joins the Big Ten. So I'm in Iowa, Thanksgiving with the in-laws for game one of the Nebraska-Iowa as a conference matchup. And I remember I tweeted this before the game. I said, this is my Super Bowl. And I had Husker fans all over my replies telling me that they didn't care. It wasn't Oklahoma. It wasn't Colorado. None of it mattered. really, since Michigan and Northwestern had already basically ruined that 2011 season. And it was frankly unbecoming of me as a Husker fan to get this fired up about a game against a team with a 500 record. So I celebrated quietly after the win. I was so glad that first game they got the win, even though Husker fans did not want me generally to be that excited about that win. Anyway, as you may have figured out, we were spending odd-numbered years in Iowa on Thanksgiving, back home in Lincoln, the even-numbered years. And in 2013, everything changes, right? You remember, Bo swung his hat. Two dudes named CJ put up 38 points for Iowa. Program's in disarray. Bo goes nuts in the press conference. I'd experienced my first Husker loss to Iowa on Iowa Soul. And this disdain that I'd had pointed at me for 16 plus years prior had finally completely metastasized in my body. And just like that, I knew, number one, I never wanted to feel like that again. Number two, I was afraid Iowa and their fans were starting to like beating Nebraska more than Nebraska and its fans hated losing to Iowa. And that was a red freaking flag. And yeah, after that, I did get the satisfaction of the win next year, 2014. But in the end, I had to evaluate where Iowa was. And besides, that game was irrelevant in the news cycle of it all. It barely felt joyful in the moment. And then year after year, pain. Little comments as I walked in for Christmas. They like, hey, what bowl is Nebraska going to this year? And boy, that Torrin Young is a pretty good back, don't you think? Is this Iowa's third or fourth Big Ten championship game coming up next weekend? And the results proved it on the field. Iowa loved winning that game more than Nebraska hated losing it. Of course, that wasn't the only factor in why they lost. There's a lot more than just that. But my worst fears had come true, right? The fan base's insistence, it was above rivalries that weren't annually deciding the national championship. This fan base's dogged insistence that Nebraska's history dictated that it was the embarrassing to get excited about beating someone without an equivalent history. The chickens, or should we say the chicken hawks, had come to roost from 2015, and they have until today in the most painful ways humanly imaginable. For more on that, I can give you a podcast recommendation if you need it. So when Nebraska's players refused to shake hands last year, contrary to sportsmanship dads all over the state, I applauded it. Would I want my kids to do it? No. Would I want Nebraska to do it in most other circumstances? No. But when the weekend starts with a program sending armed law enforcement to prevent Nebraska players from saying a pregame prayer at midfield, well, it's finally time to use the disdain for fuel, as I freaking begged everyone around me to do for decades. Now, did it change anything? Admittedly, no. I said it earlier, the game was almost the ultimate mashup of every Iowa loss for a decade. That said, I think, at least I hope, all of us, the fans, the teams, the coaches, can admit, like every other quality football program does, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, Georgia, Notre Dame, Miami, I don't name it. All of them will admit that certain games mean more because of who the opponent is. They don't give up doing that because they're great or have been great. No matter what either of us were doing in 1994, no matter how much you liked annoying Bill McCartney by acting like he didn't exist, no matter how much you want to remind Iowa their trophy case is empty, which it is, none of that is any kind of comfort when they beat your ass year after year after year after year after year, in part because they want it more. And again, I think most have come around to my way of seeing things. I really hope Matt Rule, the guy that told his players they should be offended at Akron for not taking a knee before halftime, can again find that person who knows how to leverage motivation to beat a team because of who they are and what they've done. Because if he hasn't in year 3 figured out how to do that, and we see an uninspired team today, I mean, the year's going to feel like same song, third verse, year 3. So I can't control what Matt Rule does or how he motivates because I don't have his phone number. I don't know anybody who does. But I do have you as a captive audience. So let's just see if I can grease the wheels a bit now, a little under an hour before kickoff, given my intimate knowledge of the idiots out walking around. For instance, people like to say Iowa or Nebraska has better corn. That's kind of the fun argument with this whole thing. Fine, have that play fight. But when you get your plate at a great restaurant, are you drooling about the corn? Hell no. It's the steak. No one's like, hey, This corn house has some of the most high-quality, melt-in-your-mouth corn you'll ever have. Hell no! There's no other food, especially corn, that equals the experience of a perfect steak. Bad news, Iowa. While the corn difference is negligible at best, we're beating your ass at the food that matters. And by the way, speaking of food, what's your freaking deal with food? You've got some of the worst developed food palates on earth. And yeah, I know all of us in the Midwest and the Plains aren't known for the most exotic of dishes, but even saying that, somehow Iowa's aversion to taste and properly cooked meat and seasonings, any modicum of culinary adventure is bizarre. Like half of Iowa won't even eat green bell peppers because they're too spicy. These guys make South Dakota look like Morocco. And it's not just the food they make at home. Look, I unfortunately know Valentino's Pizza has been something that local cool kids like to crap on, and I have to defend because I'm not hell-bent on being a contrarian. But the one thing that we can all agree on, even if you're part of the anti-Val's woke mob, is that it still kicks the crap out of Iowa pizza. Hey, look, right? We all appreciate a cheap gas station pizza, right? I do. I'll get a Casey's Pizza in Lincoln now that they're here, now and then. But you know what I don't do, and I assume none of you do? We never order the number one selling Casey's Pizza in Iowa. What is it? Well, it's what Iowans consider their most daring foray into ethnic food fusions. The taco pizza. They love that crap. Hey, why don't we do like maybe a meat lovers, maybe spicy sausage and peppers? Well, I say, as we're ordering pizza in Iowa, well, Jack, we probably won't be able to do that because we need to get 3 plain cheese pizzas and 3 taco pizzas. And if it wasn't enough that you have grown-ass adults eating plain cheese pizza, the foodies in the room are digging into a hamburger pizza, lightly coated hamburger with extra mild Old El Paso taco seasoning and covered in hot, slimy lettuce and stale-ass wet generic Doritos. And look, I've got plenty of nostalgia while I'm at it on pizza. For Pizza Ranch, it was my only option for pizza in Northwest Iowa for 4 years. And the $5 late night pizzas, lifesavers for me. But after I got back to the real world, I realized that Pizza Ranch's crust is so bland and tasteless. I wonder if they're actually doing some sort of flavor deletion from it while making it. Also, nothing says we're proud of our amazing pizza like saying, yeah, but you got to admit the broasted chicken and green beans are pretty good. And while Nebraska is famous for the runs, and again, every mainstream success has its local detractors, once again, all Nebraskans can rise together and join hands and say with one heart and one voice, what the hell were you trying to do with made right sandwiches, Iowa? Like, we get it. It's a loose meat sandwich, yet somehow your fear of table pepper and inability to cook beef, given your unfamiliarity with preparing the meat, has created a tasteless grocery store hamburger bun forward dish that's got all the structural integrity of a hastily constructed outhouse. But let's be honest, it's probably the better half of the meat. It's probably better that I effed that one up. But let's be honest, it's probably better that half the meat ended up on the floor instead of in our mouths. Speaking of outhouses, did you guys, Iowa, did you really create your own one state only name for porta potties? Do you refer to temporary outdoor plumbing so often you need some sort of a code word for it for your state only? What the hell is it with using the word kaibo? You don't know what I'm talking about? Don't believe me? Point to an outhouse and ask an Iowan what it is. They'll call it a kaibo. No one else in America knows what that means. In Hawaii, they say aloha can mean anything and everything. In Iowa, nearly anything and everything can refer to non-indoor plumbing. No, but seriously, congratulations on your most notable cultural linguistic legacy being directly connected to any time someone is asking where they can take a dump. Speaking of cultural legacy, we need to thank Iowa for their biggest musical contribution to American music, Slipknot. Now, it's an impressive feat to wear both such goofy-ass costumes that your shows look like methed out D-list a haunted house in your nightmare and still be wildly disliked by the metal community because you're too mainstream. Hey guys, Guar called. They think you're trying a little too hard to be scary. Once again, much like Vowels and Runs that every local isn't necessarily a fan, but one of our native bands, 311, can be divisive in this state. But once again, We can all band together, wear red, and say a bunch of guys from Omaha West Side dabbling in reggae-infused rap seems like a great idea in comparison to a new metal nostalgia monster cosplay act. Listen, Iowa, I love you as a state. I really do. Or at least I love a lot of people who come from your state. And just because you've committed to the act of stolen pork tenderloin valor, ask Indiana about that, doesn't mean we don't have a meaningful relationship. And I do have to give you kudos, not only to one of your tight ends who stood up at the line of scrimmage with his hands on his hips like a complete weirdo, become a U.S. ambassador to NATO. He also did the important work of helping create a product, and I'm not kidding, known as the masculine toilet, a commode supposedly designed for, quote, well-endowed men, end quote, to prevent their genitalia from touching the porcelain or water in a standard toilet bowl. The company claimed the invention would protect males from infections, diseases, or other health hazards. Yes, we get it. I'm sure you needed it. Nothing says I'm super well endowed by telling everyone you had to create your own toilet to facilitate you. Also, man, do you guys like toilets. Anyway, game's getting close. All that said, I appreciate what Iowa's contributed to my life, because even though I had a rough start, I came in the clutch. And the Iowan from the first date, well, you like apples? Because I got her number. She's upstairs, and she's wearing red today. How do you like them apples? Goodbye.